Hey everyone, I just wanted to drop in and give the event horizon for August of 2024. I'm recording this on August 6th, 2 days past the new moon. This is what August looks like. We had the new moon in Leo on a couple days ago on the 4th. Venus also entered Virgo that same day. Mercury went retrograde on the 5th. And on the 14th, we have Mercury entering Leo, Mars conjunct Jupiter, which is kind of a big deal. And then the next day, we have Mars and Jupiter conjunct square Saturn, also a really big deal because we are dealing with this Jupiter square Saturn is kind of like a big deal, big deal. So we're going to get into that. On the 19th, this full moon in Aquarius. It is also in a T-square to Uranus that day. And this is the day that the DNC, the Democratic National Convention in America, kicks off. Then on the 22nd, the sun enters Virgo. The 28th, Mercury finally moves direct. And on the 29th, Venus enters Libra. So that's the event horizon, and I'm going to get into looking at the full moon chart for the weekend of the DNC. So stay in here. This is brought to you by Cosmosis. I am Julie Wilder, and I am a I own an independent bookstore, and I make a line of calendar astrology graphic calendars that I've been selling for like 10 or 11 years now. Both of those websites, spiralcircle.com for the bookstore and spiralspectrum.com for the astrology line. So first, I just want to give you the new moon chart. Even though the new moon was a couple days ago, I just think it's worth kind of looking at what was making the headlines. The Olympics was kind of has been dominating the news cycle for in a lot of ways. We have, I'm not going to get much into it because it just passed, but I just wanted to put that in there. And anybody who wants to look at this chart, hit pause and look at this chart can do so to see what they see in the stars for themselves. But the big story this month is actually the full moon chart. And that, again, is happening on the eve of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. So the way that this chart is laid out, I have some kind of words all around here. So I have put the Sabian symbols right next to each of the planets. They are highlighted. And then you'll also see some like Occupy Wall Street, Fantasia, Walden, The Big City, a movie set, The Hive. Those describe the constellations that are activated with all of the planets in the sky right now. So lots of interesting things going on here. And what I like to do is start with giving you, start from like the outer planets and working my way in because that gives us some context in the container. One of the big highlights that we've been talking about basically since the series started is that we are in the USA's Pluto return, which has been going on since 2020. And this is basically Pluto is returning to the same exact spot in the zodiac as it was when our nation was formed. Everything, humans have a birth chart, but so do nations. And so this is why we've, this is the Tea Party, the Capitol insurrection, absolute rule versus democracy, pandemic. So this is revisiting themes from the founding of the USA that struggle between all those different things. And so Pluto usually begins by breaking down a structure, then it creates a new one in its place. So this will be really cool. In its optimal expression, this transit offers the opportunity to reform healthcare, elections, and social justice. These structures are clearly breaking down. The hope is that we can build something new from the ashes. And so that is really important. I like to give people context for like the timeline that we're in. So Pluto, planet of transformation and empowerment. The archetype is the superhero. What is my deepest desire is the question Pluto is asking us. And Aquarius is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It is about knowledge, freedom. It's very much gives Occupy Wall Street vibes, right? And so if you look at the top here, you can see Pluto, it takes 244 years just about to go around the entire zodiac sign, or the zodiac wheel, and it spends about 20 years in each zodiac sign. And so the fact that we are kind of in this transition from Capricorn into Aquarius is a big deal. It was in Capricorn in 2008. From 2008 until it moved into Aquarius in March of 2023. And then because of retrograde, it moved back into Capricorn in June of 2023. And then it started going forward again in January 20th of this year. And that's kind of where we're at right now. But it is moving into Capricorn on September 1st. Just coming up in about a month here. And then we have the election. And then after the election, we on the 11/19th, it moves back into Aquarius where it will stay until 2043 when it moves into Pisces. And so that is, we're kind of on the last tail end of this Capricorn business and moving into a dawning of an age of Aquarius. It's supposed to be a very progressive time, very humanitarian time. And so one of the images that I like to show with this is based on the Sabian symbols. Here it is. This is kind of Pluto and Aquarius vibes at this moment. And I think I'm gonna switch over so I can read to you the Sabian symbols for what is going on here in Pluto. The chart is, of course, for the moment. So Pluto is at the Sabian symbol. It's at an old Adobe mission in California. So this is about pioneering, community building, but also, it's also very proselytizing. It's a mission, and so that is kind of like the archetypical symbol of the degree of Aquarius that is at. And then also the moon, which moves really, really fast. So it's not going to stay in this position for very, very long. But it is, the moon rules over emotions. And that is very much talking about the Sabian symbol is a tree felled and sawed to ensure a supply of wood for the winter. So this is all about gathering resources, preparing for harder times, stockpiling, open fires, publishing books, renewable resources, making and printing money, things, fuel, gas, recycling. So those are things that are very much on people's minds, the economy, the environment, and that is going to be something that we're going to be hearing about on this full moon. Now I'm going to go backwards because this is the imagery that I picked up. So you'll see at the bottom here, I have this like an old Adobe mission, and the image there is actually from when the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, was held in Chicago. In a little bit of a throwback. That was a very revolutionary humanitarian time. And it was also on the heels, you can see down here in the archways, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated just prior to the Democratic National Convention. And then right before the Democratic National Convention, RFK, Bobby Kennedy, was also assassinated. And so I thought it was just very interesting that the Democratic National Convention is going to be back in Chicago, where there was quite a historic moment, a lot of feelings and vibes. So you see, I've just kind of put Kamala's, face, hovering above Martin Luther King, talking about his dreams. But also, interestingly, you also have Robert Kennedy's son, Robert Kennedy Jr., is also a presidential independent party contender. And there are a lot of people that are concerned he may peel votes away from Harris and tip the Electoral College in Trump's favor. And so this is very interesting. And I actually did a deep dive into RFK Jr. last night. And the vibes I'm getting from him is very much, traumatized, unhealed trauma, of course, from the, just absolute insanity that his family has had to deal with. And so he's stated he wants to try to destroy the Republican and the Democratic parties. And that is basically his reason for running. So it's kind of interesting that, of course, politics, United States politics killed his father and his uncle. And he was a young man when that happened. So it is just very interesting to see him, at this pivotal moment coming back, kind of like America's Black Sheep son. He's, had a dark history of addiction, both drug and sex addiction. And yet he's running on an environmental platform. And so it's just very interesting because it seems like a little bit of a karmic healing moment, hopefully for him, that he can heal some of that trauma. But I just thought it was very interesting that he's kind of on the scene at this time. Okay, so that is a little bit of backdrop. Now, the next two planets, Saturn and Neptune, these are in Pisces. And I'm going to give you the timelines for this one in a second, but this is Pisces is very Fantasia is the word I use to describe Pisces, to give you a little bit of an archetype allegory. It's can be very spiritual and dreamy, but also very delusional. And having Saturn and Neptune there is an interesting combination. It's definitely one of the reasons why we've seen the rise of conspiracies, propaganda, delusions, escapism, all of that kind of stuff. Is the atmosphere is right for that. And so if you look at Saturn and Neptune, these are again, not the fastest moving planets. Saturn takes 29 years to go around the zodiac, and 2.5 years to go through each zodiac sign. And Neptune takes 164 years to go around the entire zodiac, or 13.7 years in each sign. So these are interesting, and they're both doing the same thing Pluto is doing in terms of dancing back and forth as it's trying to transition signs. So we have a lot of change in the collective that is, we're moving from a more comfortable, energy that we've been kind of used to, and it's getting shook up by all of these different transitions that are afoot. And so Pluto is actively going back and forth right now, and we're in that dance. But in 2025, we're going to start seeing these both Saturn and Pisces are going to start moving into Aries, and then back into Pisces, and then back into Pisces, and then forward into Aries. And so that is going to start taking place in March. Neptune moves into Aries, and then in May, Saturn moves into Aries. They'll stay there briefly while they are in retrograde, and then they'll move forward again and stay in Aries. Saturn will stay for a couple of years until it moves into Taurus, but Neptune is going to stay for another 13 years. So that's just some background. That is going to be helping to shift things out of some of the delusional Delulu spaces. Aries is more of a pioneering kind of thing. It can signify Aries can be very hot-headed, hot-tempered. So potential for conflict to raise up. But at least it will be, trying to shift out of delusion. It'll go back into it, and then it'll shift back out of it again. So that is one of the things that is going on. And so the next two planets that we're going to look at, Saturn and Neptune, still sticking with that. Sorry about that. This is the imagery I have for the moment that we're in, because Saturn and Neptune, even though they are in the zodiac signs for a while, they shift each degree, and that's where those Sabian symbols come in. And I thought that this was incredible for the DNC. We have Saturn in Pisces at the degree that is a huge tent. A famous revivalist conducts his meetings with a spectacular performance. And this is all about energy and inspiration, having a lot to say, evangelism, whipped up emotions, media circles, instructional or dogmatic it can be. So a lot of different things, a lot of performance, showmanship, possibly mind control, big egos, charlatans, overblown. So depending on what side, there's positive and negative to every every kind of Sabian symbol. So, there's going to be positive expressions that you're going to see in one place, and then negative expressions of this in other places. And so that's something to be looking out for. And the other one is, which I thought was incredibly fascinating, is Neptune will be at the degree of Pisces called the Great Stone Face. This is talking about the boy lived in childhood under a hill figure of a president, and when he grew up, he became a president himself. So you may find that you are growing into the image that you imagine, and it gives you a sense of pride. So I have that, what you see here is a young girl looking up at the founding fathers, and it's interesting that the Sabian symbols were written at a time that they couldn't even imagine a woman might be president, so they said boy. But here we have somebody looking past the founding fathers at the Democratic nominee, and seeing that it might be possible to attain this, not just for a woman, but for a woman of color. So I thought that was really incredible symbolism at those Sabian symbols for the Democratic National Convention. At the same time, Uranus, which is also another kind of slow-moving planet, it has been here since 2018. In Taurus, and it will be here until 2025. So yet another outer planet will be shifting in 2025, which is really, really cool. That we're going to see a lot of kind of entrenched energies being able to move past those, which I think we could all say we are looking, when is this going to be over, right? Well, we are going to be moving past some of these entrenched energies. We'll be moving on to other kinds of energies, but there at least will be some movement in 2025. So now this is interesting, though, because Uranus is about individuality and freedom, innovation. And this is at the degree a person in middle life stands in rapt sudden realization of forgotten charms in unexpected recovery of romance. So this is going to be more about people finding a renewal of love, knowledge, interest when it looked like all opportunities had passed. Second chances, finding something to be passionate about, awakenings. And so that is just kind of, I turned the lens from looking at Kamala on stage to Kamala looking out at the people. And so this is even, so reading some of this on the screen, even when it feels like all chances of wonderful things have passed, something comes back into your life, and it can be inspiring, delicious, and revivifying. And so this is very interesting. And I'm also curious if Donald Trump might throw JD Vance out in order to revive his campaign and take some of the media attention away from the Democrats right now. That's a possibility too. But this is just very interesting lineup for the full moon weekend that the Democratic National Convention is having coming up soon. So then we have two planets that are actually really close to each other in the sky. This is Jupiter, which usually stays in a sign for about a year. Mars goes a lot quicker through each sign, usually about 2 months. And so Jupiter is optimism and expansion beliefs. It also rules over government bodies, elections, different things like that. Now Mars here is also embodiment, defense and assertion. So this is, Kamala Harris has been when we fight, we win. So this is definitely talking about a fight, but it's also the degrees that they're at in the zodiac and Gemini are very interesting. So this is a lot about, Gemini is all about communicating what do we think. So this is a great time to communicate our values and to be really bold and assertive about them, but also optimistic and expansive about them. So, Jupiter is at the degree two Chinese men talking Chinese in a Western crowd. So this is transcending feelings of alienation, having a specialized language that doesn't communicate with everyone, having a completely different mindset, interpretations. So this is where you can see, depending on what your worldview is, you're going to take the other party, very interesting, very different from what the intention is within that party. But each party itself will probably, understand the language of their leadership. Now, Mars being at the degree of a cafeteria with abundance of choices, this is, of course, showing a wide range of nourishment and opportunity and ability to have things, but each choice has a price. So it's asking you to be careful about what you choose. So take what you need, enjoy it, and realize the abundance that's happening in your life. Make sure that what you get is good quality, as many things may not be. So this is very interesting. On the Democratic side, I can see looking at all of the different values and beliefs that will be part of this campaign, the Harris Waltz campaign. And interestingly, also this, I'm curious again about if Trump might fire JD Vance and be looking at different choices to help counter the ticket that he's up against now. So those are all very interesting things that are going on there. And then we're going to move over to Leo. And we've got two things going on in Leo. We've got the Sun and Mercury. They're almost conjunct on the full moon, which is giving a lot of power to Mercury. I think Mercury's placement here is really good. It is being in retrograde. It is the degree of daybreak. This implies the gradual feeling that darkness is dispersing and that a new day is on the horizon. You may feel there's a chance for new beginnings. Things along the way have been sacrificed, and there may be sort of emptiness. It goes on. And so new cycles beginning, leaving the past behind. Again, this speaks to the rejuvenation in the Democratic Party. Could also signal a JD Vance firing, and Trump can thinking about a new VP pick, which might ignite his base the same way that the Democratic base has been ignited with Kamala stepping into the Democratic presidency role. Nominee. And then also the Sun is at the degree. Now the Sun moves really quick, so does Mercury, so these aren't going to stay too long at these degrees. But this is many little birds on a limb of a large tree. The Sun is there, gathering with people, sharing ideas, multi-level marketing, big business, government and bureaucracy, database switchboards, the internet and chat groups, birds, trees, things like that. So there is a lot going on there. All of it is completely illustrating what we're seeing and what we're going to see this coming week. But then also Venus is in Virgo, and it is swimming a race at the Sabian symbol. And so this is about competition. This is about being focused. It also implies a lot of readiness, right? And so this is wanting to be first, medals, capitalism, striving for first place. So this is saying that neither of these, candidates on either side is going to be taking this race for granted. Everyone is going to be looking to win and competing. And so I think it is also going to go down to who's prepared and who's not prepared. And so I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of that going on. Now, I want to bring you back for a second to the chart of the full moon. Again, this is the August 19th chart, the first day of the DNC. And you can see I've put the Sabian symbols here so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. But I want to point out a couple of things. One, you have Venus basically in opposition to Saturn. So Venus in a competitive degree, which is very organized. It is, and it also represents the feminine. And it is directly in opposition to Saturn in Pisces. Now, Saturn is typically associated with patriarchy, authoritarianism, possibly, and it is in the sign of Pisces, which is delusion. So you have this kind of face-off between the feminine, Virgo is also acts of service, community. I call it the hive because it's all about the community. And so you have this opposition of that across from that. Now, interestingly, that is also squaring this Jupiter-Mars conjunction. Now, the conjunction itself takes place on the 14th and 15th, really. So the exact, conjunction is then. So it's starting to fade a little bit by the time we get to the DNC, but it's still impacting. It's actually impacting the energy as of this recording because it's, that's just, it's not like a down to the second thing. It's an overtime span thing. So I'm going to get to the degrees that it's at in a second, but this feminine, organized feminine in acts of service and community over here, across from the patriarchy, the delusional patriarchy facing off, and it is, being challenged by this Jupiter Mars energy, is very, very interesting. And then you also have, one of the big stories is this Saturn Jupiter square that is kind of a big deal. So just that alone is a big deal. And we're going to see the themes of that. We're feeling that energy all year. Mars just happens to be up in the business right now at the same time. So those are like very interesting to look at. And so I wanted to kind of get to the Saturn and Jupiter cycle, or I'm sorry, Jupiter, well, yeah, Jupiter, Saturn, doesn't matter. This basically ties back, there was a grand conjunction on December 21st of 2020 at 0 degrees Aquarius, which is also where the Pluto was, right? Or Pluto, we're trying to get to that Pluto 0, right? So at that same degree, we are having 2 squares this year. One is happening mid August, just before the DNC, and the 14th and the 15th is when it's really tight, but it's really impacting a couple weeks on either side. And we're also going to see this again late December 2024, the same energy lineup, not with Mars involved, but this Jupiter and Saturn square. That's going to be happening right after the election. And so there's a really good video. I'm not going to play it for you here, but Nightlight Astrology, he gives a really great breakdown of the history of this square, how it acts, and how it's all about breaking down systems, but replacing it with new. And so it is definitely a death and a rebirth, but it does hold the promise of a smooth transition into a relatively smooth, transition into installation of the new systems. So the old story is fading away, the new story is being born. This is actually a very good thing, depending on who you are. For me, it's great. And then what is interesting to me as I was looking at that chart, Venus is in Virgo, as we saw, and it's right next to the Sun and Mercury, essentially conjunct in Leo. And so you have this Saturn Pisces energy. So, you've got Jupiter. So this is kind of looking at the Jupiter Mars squaring Saturn with Venus. I think it's being, let me look at the chart. Yeah, so we've got that square here. Yeah, so Venus is squaring that. That's what's going on. Yeah, so this is interestingly, when this conjunction happens on the 14th and 15th, it's happening at the Sabian symbol of a head of a robust youth changes into that of a mature thinker. To me, this signifies that the youth have been energized and are engaged, and are really, they may have been disengaged this whole time because, think about it. You're a young person. You came up through, your childhood was with dealing with the Trump and the pandemic, and now you got this guy Biden in there, and you're like, you know what, this is super uninspiring, and I'm not even involved in politics, right? I'm checking out, right? Well, now with new energy, with Harris being put in, as well as now Waltz, he's super progressive on issues that I think matter to the youth. This is going to make them pay attention. It's going to make them stand up and pay attention. And looking at that Venus in Virgo, I immediately was thinking about the Hive, and Beyonce, of course, has the Bay Hive. And Taylor Swift, of course, these are both powerful women figures that have organized, and built relationships with an entire hive of fans. And obviously, they are both, supporting a Democratic nominee. I would not be surprised if they both show up to perform at the DNC. I think that would be amazing if they did. But what you're going to really see is a lot of powerful women with a lot of influence and who have organized communities, not just popular musicians, but also activists that have been on the ground doing this grassroots work for a long time. And so they are going to be activated, and they're going to be really focusing on that youth vote, because getting out that youth vote is how you're going to win this election. So that is the energy of the full moon coming up on August 6th. And it is really fun to look at these Sabian symbols and all of the different placements that are going on. I did want to look while it was here. I didn't even look at this earlier, but I forgot to kind of look at that T square with Uranus. Okay, T square. Here we go. So the 27. So yeah, you have this Uranus with the sun, and also over here to the moon. Is that going to the moon? Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that's very interesting. So you have this moon opposite the sun and Mercury, essentially. And then that is T squaring off this Uranus. I thought it was also T squaring off of Venus. Maybe I was wrong. Yeah, so that's just another. Again, this is Uranus is um, Uranus is a powerful one. It is. It's powerful, and it's all up in here, and it's also yeah. Just now that moon will move really really fast. So this square up here to Mercury and the Sun in conjunction is interesting. So there's going to be some tension breaking through there. So, all right. Oh, I didn't look at that too closely, but hopefully you guys get the story. I'm Julie Wilder. This is my Cosmosis report for the full moon in August, and you can find me my astrology stuff at spiralspectrum.com, and my metaphysical shop is spiralcircle.com. Thanks for tuning in.